This is Sarah Levitt with the Making Magnificence Project. And today, this is a super cool and interesting and one of its first of its kind interview with Glen Tullman, founder and CEO of Transcarent. Not because this is our first interview, but because it's our first 10-year retrospective interview. So welcome, Glen Tullman.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to be your first 10-year retrospective, which means that we should have 10 more years of wisdom. We'll see.
That's what I'm going to be looking for sure. Yeah. No, really. I mean, it's a real opportunity to kind of take a look back as well as look forward. But before we kind of do that, I want to just kind of frame this up for our listeners. So the first time that we did an interview for the Making Magnificence Project was 10 years ago. You were just launching, really, Livongo at that time. Then went on to lead it through this tremendous IPO and merger with Teladoc, which was valued at $18.5 billion. And you did that in 6 years, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about speed in a little bit. And then shortly thereafter, launched Transcarent. Yes, do I have the chronology?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So first kind of catch us up. So what is Transcarent and why this?
Well, I think you do have to kind of, as you did, start with, we all come from our history in some respects. So Livongo was really an amazing company, and I'm very proud of the fact that today more than 1 million people are healthier and happier because of Livongo. So that's a great accomplishment. The most important thing, because we're in healthcare. So people talk about the financial success and what a great company we built, but it's really about the people, the people with diabetes and other chronic conditions. But what was very unique about Livongo is maybe for the first time you had a digital health company that was able to accomplish 3 things. First, create an experience that people didn't just like, they actually loved. So that was something that hadn't really been done before. Second,
and Glen, let me interrupt for just a second and clarify. And you hadn't done that before, is that correct? Like Livongo was your first attempt. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
And so we created this experience that people loved. Second, we were able to actually prove that they were healthier using it. Now, we were lucky because in the diabetes space where we started, you can start day one with a blood glucose level, a BG level, or an A1C. These are all measures of how much sugar you have in your blood. And we could see after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months that people, their A1Cs and their blood sugar had less variation and actually was reduced. So we could prove they were healthier. Not always easy to do in healthcare. And then last but not least, we did it at about half the cost that employers were traditionally paying. So this is why it was valued, not just by the members, but by employers. It's why we grew so quickly and why it was valued so much higher. So fast forward, we complete the merger, we move on, and I start getting calls from employers who say, can you do what you did for chronic conditions in the rest of healthcare? And that was very interesting to me. And I knew that, our work wasn't done. In fact, our work was really just getting started. So this was an opportunity. And the reality is I love building businesses. I love that process, that creative process. I love solving problems. There's no more important problem than our health and care. And I separate those two because keeping people healthy is very different than caring for people. And so this was really an opportunity to say we could do this again at a larger scale. We could bite off something bigger and even more significant than chronic conditions. And that is the experience that people have with their health and care. And today that experience is not viewed very favorably by anyone. So that was the big undertaking.
And you've said, and I know this about you, that you love building businesses. I mean, I kind of refer to you sincerely as a serial CEO, and you like solving problems. There are lots of problems that you could be solving, you know, when I think about societal challenges. Why healthcare?
Well, I think the most important problem for anyone is, in fact, their health.
Mhm.
That's the biggest challenge. And we always hear the story of the billionaire who says, I'd give all my money away if I could just live another year longer to see my kids and my grandchildren. And this story has been repeated, for ages. So first health, second education, and
Mhm.
then everything else. And that's really, I've never met anyone who wouldn't give all their money away to not have cancer or to not, have any of the other debilitating diseases that we face, particularly as we get older, but not always.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I've never met a parent who wouldn't
Mhm.
give all their money away to
Yes.
make sure their kids stayed healthy. So, first and foremost, it's important for people, individuals. It's also important for our country because
Mhm.
our current
Mhm.
healthcare cost and trajectory doesn't allow us to be competitive with the rest of the world. And it's not just because we take good care of our people, because other countries do a better job of taking care of their overall population than we do for a lot less money. So, technology gives us the ability to finally make health and care more available to everyone, to take the cost out, and to drive higher quality. And that's really the challenge. But it is a challenge not just about technology, but it's about business structure. And it's also about existing businesses who have a vested interest in not doing what we just talked about. They
Mhm.
make
Mhm.
money from people being sick and from delivering care.
Mhm.
And so we've got a big challenge ahead of us to flip that, to say, let's pay people to keep people healthy, not to treat them when they get sick.
You're almost trying to create an inversion of a model, yes, of a traditional model. And I mean, in many
Yes.
ways, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a challenge when you say to someone, I want you to do the right thing, even if it does cost you your job.
Right.
Generally, they
Yeah.
choose their job.
Right.
And we are driving, and I'll talk later about our use of generative AI and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what we've newly introduced that will change everything in healthcare. Pretty fascinating.
Well,
And
tell us about, because I've got some questions for you about, but so tell us, because I've got, I'm not going to
well,
stop you. Yeah.
look, traditionally in healthcare, you had three different silos, if you will. First and foremost, something called benefits navigation. And that was understanding what's covered. And the dirty little secret in
Mm.
America is when someone gets sick, their first question for the average American is not about how do I fix my hip or my back? It's how much will it cost?
So, right. Yeah.
Because healthcare is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States. And that's a crazy thing if you think about it. But healthcare navigation is one whole segment that employers pay for. It's also, in addition to that dirty little secret, the fact that our healthcare is so complex that you need a whole separate segment to navigate it tells you part of our challenge. So
Mm-hmm.
that's number one. Two is clinical guidance. And that is, what should I actually do? How do I get in to see a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
a nurse, a specialist to know what my issue is? And how do I make sure it's trusted advice, that it's appropriate advice? We've all heard that, that expression that if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a surgeon, everything gets operated on. So if you go to the wrong part of our healthcare system, you're going to get what you ask for, and that's not always appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got benefits navigation, you have clinical guidance, and last but not least, you have care delivery. And each one of those is a separate silo. They almost require you to start over. So for the first time at Transcarent, what we've done is we've used the power of generative AI to put all of those together in a simple interface that you can talk to in any language at all. It will answer you back in that language. You can talk
Any language at all.
any language at all.
Wow.
You can talk to it. You can text with it. It will give you the answers to all that. It will do so 24 hours a day. It never sleeps.
Yeah.
It will do so virtually instantly. And it does three things. It helps you navigate your benefits. It gives you very sound, trusted clinical advice. And it actually will begin the care delivery process by connecting you to a physician within 60 seconds, 24 hours a day. So think of this as, you know, we all had flip phones. Admit it, you had one too. We all had flip phones. And the move from a flip phone to an iPhone wasn't just a better flip phone. It was wholly different. It was the flip phone did one thing. It made calls. The iPhone gave you access to everything. And so this move from traditional care navigation, and there's a number of companies, the Accolades and the Quantums, where you call and you get somebody on the phone. The move from that to this next new generation of wayfinding, where you simply look at your phone, it looks at you, and you start talking, and you ask it any kind of question. Because the fallacy of navigation, we all have navigation in our car. That works well if you know exactly where you need to go. The problem is in healthcare, people say things like, my shoulder hurts. Well, we've never had a system that could deal with that. Now we do. And our wayfinding would say, I'm sorry to hear that. Tell me more about what's happening with your shoulder. It would have an entire conversation, and you could say, what are my options? Well, you have digital therapy through someone like Sword, one of our great partners. Or you could have somebody, you could go somewhere and see someone in person. Or if necessary, you could have surgery. But we wouldn't recommend that without a second opinion. Oh, you can get that second opinion right here through our partner, the clinic from Cleveland Clinic. All of that is contained in one site. You don't have to go anywhere, and it's just driven by you. You're the person in power. So
would it
think of
be
it
accurate to say that it's doing the initial sifting in the process and then direction, and then the physician contact provides the nuance in terms of next steps? Do I have?
if you need that, but you might say, hey, I'm thinking of this. Let's say you said, my partner and I are looking to potentially have children. We might say, here's your options. They're covered by your company. We can direct you to Progeny. That's one of the services. And we wouldn't just tell you, we'd say, now you're in the Progeny site. So we actually don't just take you to the door. We take you through the door. You don't have to relog on. Now, compare that to what you do today. And I can do that best by an example. If I said to you, here's a really tough question. You have to research it, Sarah. You have two options. You can either call your local library, get a very knowledgeable librarian on the phone. She will be, or he will be, incredibly nice to you. And they are very smart. Or you can Google it. 99% of the world would say, I'm not going to call, because what if they aren't there? What if they don't answer?
Yeah.
What if I get a message? I'm going to Google it. We've created Google for healthcare. If you wanted to buy something, we'd say you can go out and buy it and search it, or you can use Amazon, and it brings all that information to you. And there's no doubt when you use Google or when you use Amazon, who's in charge? You are. And that's what we've created with wayfinding. So this is a generational change. Now, let me add two things. One, it happens to be about a third of the cost of all of those other services that I mentioned. So now we're driving dramatically higher quality, lower cost, and speed. which everyone wants. People want things right away. And having a son who has diabetes, if I call and I say, I want to do telehealth, and it says you might have to wait 10 minutes, I'm on my way to the ER. I'm not waiting 10 minutes. If I know that I'm going to get an answer in 60 seconds, well, I can't even get in my car in 60 seconds. So that's the difference. And this, again, wayfinding is creating a whole new category. Now, it's not as easy as some people say, well, generative AI, can I just use Chat GPT? We've spent more than $100 million. We have 5 years of data to feed this large language model, or LLM. We have whole groups working on safety. If you say the word suicide, you type it or you say it, it immediately routes you to a person instantly. Why? Because that's a safety feature. This stuff doesn't just happen. But again, this took well over a year to develop, to quality control. You have to make sure these systems don't hallucinate, which is make up the answer. You have to know the data they're drawing from. So this is a complicated process. We think we're probably 2 years ahead of anyone else in the industry. And it's now starting to roll out. Very, very exciting.
Congratulations. So there's so many places I want to go here. So being 2 years ahead of anyone else in the industry is so that's not a surprise to me, because anyone who knows your business history knows that speed is at the top of your list, and that you assemble senior leadership teams. It seems to me, tell me if I've got this wrong, it seems to me you surround yourself with people who are as passionate, if that's, or close to as passionate as you, and who are also dedicated to a speed of execution. So what would you say to other CEOs about assembling really kind of exemplary senior leadership teams? Because you do that, and you also are able to, as far as I can tell, you're also able to delegate very effectively. It's something we talked about in our very first interview. I remember you saying that one of the, I'm going to paraphrase here, but it's more or less a quote. One of the blessings of growth is that you have to delegate real responsibility. And it seems you're able to do that to people around you who are quite passionate about what they're doing and able to move quickly. So how do you do that? Because that's that's not typical.
Well, I think first and foremost, I would say that the job of a CEO is, number one, begins with people, and it's building a great team of people. And that team has to be a diverse team. I'm very proud to say that almost all of the companies that I've been fortunate enough to start and or run, the management teams are about 50% women. And, we look for as much diversity in experience as we can get, so we get the best ideas on the table. But number one, responsibility, because no one can do this by themselves. And, we have this wonderful kind of fantasy of, there's a Steve Jobs and there's, Bill Gates. But every time you look at them, you see in the background some people who compensate for all of the things they don't have. And they were smart enough to let those people own their part of the puzzle and find people who are willing to let them lead at what they did. So first and foremost, really, really critical is people. Second, you have
Hang on,
to
let me pause you for just a minute. So yes,
Sure.
So what are you looking for? Because I think most CEOs would say that. They'd say we need really good people. So you're looking for diversity in a number of ways, diversity of experience, thought, et cetera. But what are you, when you say I'm looking for a great leader to bring onto my leadership team, what are you looking for, Glenn?
Well, I think it's a big part of that is understanding the vision and the mission. It's about passion, but it's really about believing in that vision. I think without exception, I could say that most of our leadership team and many of the people below that could go elsewhere and make more money, maybe work less hours, almost certainly work less hours, and they could do that, but they believe in what we're trying to do and what we will do. And so, it's interesting when we talked about Livongo, almost a third of the people in the company
Yeah.
either had diabetes or had a
Yeah, I
family
remember.
member who did.
Yeah.
So people would ask me about quality control, and I would almost laugh. I would be like, if you think someone could ever compromise quality in this place, they would be, thrown out the door in a heartbeat. So these are people who care. And what I can say, I can't ever say we won't make a mistake, but I can say no one will care more than our people, and no one will work harder than our people. And that usually is a big part of the ingredient. So number one, it's about people. It's about passionate people, people who believe in the vision and the mission. Our vision at Transcarent is one place for all your health and care, and that one place is your phone. And our mission is to make it easy, really important, to make it easy for people to access high quality, always begin with quality, high quality, affordable health and care. And by the way, that word easy is really important, because when I started Livongo and I moved out to Silicon Valley, and I heard it was different out there. And one question that I was frequently asked was, people would say to me, we don't understand it. In healthcare, you try to force people to do things. You try to bribe people to do things. And in our businesses, we just build really good apps that people want to use. And sometimes they even pay us to use them. And it was such a different perspective. So we said, what if we could build an app like we have now that you just talk to, that you can say, what's the wait time in the closest ER? And it looks at all the ERs and it tells you what the wait time is. Magical. How do I get there? Pull up a map. You don't have to say, I want you to pull up a map. It says, how do I get there? It knows what you mean. Imagine that. Find me a Spanish-speaking endocrinologist in San Jose. Boom, done. Like, this is magic. We're seeing this happen now for the first time in history, that the minute people use it, they will feel the same way they felt the first time they used Google or Uber or whatever ride sharing service you use, or anything else that we now use today, and we're just amazed about.
So
And
you
so
are
that's
clear,
what we're creating.
and I believe you that you are bringing on people who are passionate about what you're doing. So can I play devil's advocate for just a
Sure.
second? So I can imagine, my sense is that you're very good at putting together robust senior leadership teams where you're not having to be in the weeds monitoring their execution. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say that. I think, great leaders know how to get involved in very minute details and then get back out and extract themselves. So I think, again, we redefine a lot of terms. So some people would say, well, that's micromanagement. I think if you do it all the time on everything, it's micromanagement. I think if you get to that level of detail every once in a while, it keeps your people understanding how interested and how much what they do matters, whether they want to admit it or not. I think that's what it does. And so, that is my style. I think people would tell you that. And at any moment, I can go deep on something. And by the way, I don't go deep with an answer. I go deep with a beginner's mind that says, tell me why we do this. Why do we do this way? What if we did it this way? And very often our people tell me, you don't know what you're talking about. And they feel comfortable doing that. And they're generally right. But,
So,
you know,
all
that
right, that brings me to
process, yeah.
my next question.
Well,
Uh,
before you go to your next
okay, go
question,
ahead. Yeah.
because you asked me about leadership. So
Yes.
people, second, building relationships with customers. Some people would call that selling. I don't, because I think selling, when it's done right, is really about teaching. It's about exposing people to ways to do things better. If somebody came to you and said, I can save you a bunch of time, you wouldn't say, well, they're selling me something. You'd say, thank you very much. I had no idea. We've all had this. Somebody shows you on your phone, oh, you know what? You could just bump this phone and get a contact. And I was like blown away. I was like, how long has this been existing? Because I didn't know you could do that. I didn't say they're selling me something. They weren't. They were teaching me a way to be better. And so, one, people, two, building these relationships. And that's across the board. That's with your people, that's with your clients, that's with prospects, that's with your board. And then last but not least, and you know, I would be remiss if I didn't say that CEOs have to also raise money, because somebody has to pay for all this. And you have to explain this vision, and it has to be powerful enough that people will invest their money in it. So those are the roles of CEOs, I think, you know, and the best CEOs, you know, excel at least two of the three. And sometimes you can compensate for some of those with, you can get a great person who, you know, is great at raising money with you. And you can get a great person to do various pieces of it. And that's what team building is about. Go ahead. Now you had another
Well, I
question.
have like five, you know me, I've got like five questions. So are there, before I go to kind of where I was going to go, are there, so you're saying you'll kind of dive deep to kind of take a look with a beginner's mind. Are there particular things that you like to keep an eye on more deeply in business, Glenn?
I think that varies by the business, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that varies by the time where you are in the business. So at certain times, you know, certain aspects of something will become more important. At other times, it shifts. So again, that's this issue of, you know, once you have a product, you don't have to focus as much on selling that or on building it as you do on selling it. If you're out raising money and you only have 6 months left, and I've been in that situation, that's the highest priority. And people say, oh, I need you in this meeting or that meeting. Respectfully, I have to say I can't be, and I can't always tell people why, but you know, I can't be in that meeting. If you're in the middle of the acquisition of an acquisition, that becomes most important. So I think, you know, this role of CEO requires somebody who maybe, you know, can't focus on one thing for too long. You know, and
Or needs to be able to
that's
focus on many multiple things at one time, I
that's
think
right.
would be
That's right.
more, yeah.
That's right. That's more
So,
positive. Thank you.
so, so speaking of beginner's mind, this has come up before in prior conversations. And so two things about this. One is, I'm just going to ask it. How do you maintain a beginner's mind with the success that you've had? Let me start there. I
Well,
think
I
that's kind of
think,
unusual.
yeah, I think it's first and foremost, look, I never look backwards. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, very early on, and you know, I've been asked a question, why would you do this again? You know,
Right.
you've
Yeah.
had this great
Right.
success, and
Yeah.
almost every time I've left the business, people have said, why would you go? And first of all,
What are
as
you
you know,
doing?
I love building businesses,
Yes.
but on this last one, that was a almost daily question. Why in the world? You don't need to financially. Um, you know, how are you going to surpass the success you had there in delivering a great service and value for people first? Second, building a company that people said, and a lot of people to this day say, that's the best place I ever worked. You know, that's kind of a dream. And then last but not least, from a financial standpoint, how are you going to surpass that? And, you know, my view is that's kind of done. That's in the past. And, as an investor once said to me, when he was looking to invest, he came up and he
I
said,
remember this. Yeah.
this is, gosh, you've done so many wonderful things and, it must feel great. And he said, but none of those matter at all to us. And I was kind of taken aback. And he said, we're investing in the future, not in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And and people thought, when I tell that story, they say, what an idiot to say that. And I say, actually, it was wonderful advice. People don't care about the last race you ran. If you go to the Olympics, somebody doesn't say, oh, you ran a great time in the prelims. They're only focused on the future. You can't say, yeah, but I ran a better time than was the winning race that got the gold medal. Nobody cares. It's all about the future. So I'm very, very future focused. And the good news is if somebody makes a mistake, I don't focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
If I make a mistake, and people often ask, what's your biggest failure? And I say, I haven't had failures. That's not being arrogant. It's a failure if you don't learn something.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned so much because
treasure trove, right?
I've done, I am just, and that's, by the way, we call that experience when we're happy with it. Oh, I've done it that way. Don't do it that way again. And that's the experience that we have. It's not about failing. And, we use, and I love sports analogies because, if you're a great basketball player, baseball player, and you make 1 out of every 3, well, that's a good way to think about it. Think about you miss 2 out of every 3. Doesn't sound so great. And yet that's excellence. So in business, why do we think we're going to be right every time? We shouldn't. And now I don't agree. Some people say we celebrate our failures. I don't want to celebrate a failure.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to learn from it. And I want to move on as quickly as we can. But I surely don't want to celebrate it. We're going to reward people for failing. Really? Not the work for my company. On the other hand, we're not going to punish them. We're going to say you learned something. That's great. Don't do it again. That's all.
So maintaining that kind of, a beginner's mind. So being future focused and constantly being in learning mode. I'm also interested in, because I've heard you talk about this before, and I think this is integral, tell me where I'm wrong, to the kind of speed that you generate in your organization, speed of execution and innovation, where you'll go to someone and say, we need something in 6 weeks, and they'll say, no, that takes 3 months. And you say, see if we can do it in 6 weeks, like think outside the box. So how do you nourish that mindset in the people you're leading as well? To me, the least best response to someone asking for more is when a team member says, we've never done it that way before. And I'm thinking, yeah, and we wouldn't have running water if we'd never done that. We wouldn't have anything if that were but so you're going to people and you're saying, I want you to think differently than the way it's been done before. So what would you say to other CEOs about nourishing and nurturing that kind of stretch in your people?
Well, I think the more you do it, this is a skill set. The more you do it, the more, and I've had many people say, look, we never believed we could do it. And you believed in us. You believed we could do it. And that's a big part of it. And this issue, and it is a mindset. Again, I love to ask the question, why not today? We're going to sign the contract in 2 weeks. Why can't we sign it today? What are the hurdles? Because those same hurdles may exist 2 weeks from now. Let's do it today. Why? And so, that sense of, look, one, I have great confidence that our people can do much more than they ever expect. And two, we have to do that to stay ahead. Again, I like to think that, no is the beginning of a conversation. Now that was not something that benefited me with my kids, because we would say no and they would say, okay, let's talk about it. And, but, that is, in fact, no is just a moment in time when someone thought they couldn't do something. And I think the job of a leader is to redefine, and this is not my quote, I think it was Max Dupree, but the job of a leader is to redefine reality and say, imagine if we could do it. At Livongo, we had this issue of why weren't people checking their blood sugar? Well, testing strips were too expensive. And so we said, what if we made them free? That was just a crazy idea. What would it take to make them free? How much would it cost to make them free? Then it turns out they don't cost $30. They don't even cost $10. They cost $2 or $3 to manufacture.
Yeah.
Well, now all of a sudden you're not that far from free. Well, maybe you could. Is anybody going to test too much, prick their finger more than they should? Probably not. So we can now start to build a model that says, we'll make them free. And that changed this whole dynamic about rationing and about all of these. And so in a similar way, sometimes you turn the problem upside down and, you say, well, we could do that. So, rather than no, because, Lee Shapiro, my longtime business partner, likes to say, yes, if. We can do anything, yes, if we have X. Oh, well, if we had twice as many people, well, if we had better software, well, if we had, okay, well, great. Well, now we're ready to go. Now we can start to work that problem. And so I think it's just that is this idea of redefining reality. What if we can do, because everything that we love today was unimaginable not so long ago.
Yes.
If you said, I ordered some running shoes the other day, I was sitting here at this desk, I ordered them, and I heard a knock at my door less than 2 hours later. Less than 2 hours later.
Who are you getting your running shoes from? I'm looking for mine and they're out of stock. I clearly need a clue.
This is interesting. So I went to the site, New Balance. They were out.
I know.
Went to Amazon. They had them.
Yeah.
They were delivered to my house, to my door, in less than 2 hours. Now that, again, is as close to magic. And again, this quote I love, technology perfectly applied is indistinguishable from magic. So, you do something and all of a sudden this happened and it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Now imagine if you went in and said to somebody, we're going to have it so you can be home and it can be delivered faster than you could go to the store, park, go in, try them on, buy it, come back.
Yeah.
And so each of these things is because someone said, we're going to figure this out. Now, what do you need to do that? Well, you need great data that says there's a certain number of people in Chicago that are going to order a certain size of these within a week or 2 weeks, and we're going to have them locally, and then we're going to use a local service to just deliver them to their door. And we can do all that faster than we could put them on a truck and ship them and store them and just in time. So I think that sense of what CEOs do, a big part of that is to have that vision and that relentlessness to say, we are going to figure this out.
And I'm hearing too, there's a convergence of the beginner's mind with any obstacle. So you're kind of, I'm hearing you say, well, there might be an obstacle, but let's see if it's a true obstacle. And if we turn things the right way, if we turn the lens the right way.
That's why, if you look at, again, we are infinitely curious when we're born and when we're young, and we get taught not to be curious. But if you take a 7-year-old, she or he will spend hours trying to figure something out. And an adult will try it once or twice and won't be able to. And then we're amazed when they've done it. And we have to get back to that, again, beginner's mind of saying, we want to learn, we're going to play with it, we're going to tinker with it, we're going to keep at it. until we figure it out.
Do you think
And
you
that's true with
particularly
most
like
business
solving
problems.
difficult problems? Not just problems, but hard, but complex problems, Glenn?
Well, I think that is healthcare is a complex problem.
Yes,
So I think by definition,
yes.
our goal is to make it easier or at least seem easy for people who want to access care, um, and make those decisions easy.
Do you think
So
you're drawn to
anytime,
kind of complex, like like complex, you're not just solving problems, you're solving really complex problems.
well, I'm not sure that's true. I think solving a complex problem is figuring out a new drug. It's,
Mm,
these are more logistical problems, access problems. They are hard. I'm not sure they're complex.
mm,
There are really smart people figuring out, again, cures to diseases and things. Those are complex. This is hard because a lot of the problem is people. A lot of the problem is incentive structures. People get paid to do the wrong thing. And so I think there's a difference between hard problems and complex problems. And so now some of our folks who are designing our generative AI programs,
yeah.
those are complex
Yeah, sounds
problems. I
pretty
mean, those are
complex. Yeah.
some of our physicians. I mean, I have tremendous admiration for people who've gone to medical school and understand our bodies and diseases. But what we're doing here is just hard to do. And it's hard because there's people involved, and it's hard because you've got to change processes. People don't love to do that, but it's worth it. And I think we have to keep coming back to not how we do it, but why we do it.
Mhm.
And the why is we can change people's lives. And we get stories and we circulate these stories, about people who say, "You changed my life. You may have saved my life." And these are our frontline people, who are talking to them and using our technology and making drugs available at lower cost. I mean, these are life-changing decisions, that we're helping people make, and that we're delivering to people. So that's what makes the hard work worthwhile for our people.
Yeah, no, you're constantly, when you're talking about kind of what you're working on or leading people, you're constantly coming back to kind of the passion and the meaning of the work. I mean, I'm hearing that loop over and again. I want to switch in the time that we have left. I want to switch tracks for just a little bit. I think most of us would agree that we find ourselves in somewhat volatile times, both in the US and abroad.
Really?
And I'm hearing from clients, CEOs, that there is a growing expectation that they will be weighing in on issues of the day. And I wanted to kind of check in with you on that. How do you see your role? So I have two questions here. How do you see your role as CEO in these as a business leader in these matters? And then the second is, what are you doing to encourage and nurture civility in your organizations?
Well, first of all, I think it's a fascinating question. In today's world, what we're seeing is the workforce, particularly in America, I think is less happy than they've ever been, without any particular reason. They just are unhappy. And so there's a lot of that. And part of it may be because many of the institutions that we depended on in the past, religious institutions, have faltered. Our press has been called into question. All these institutions are schools that have been called into question. So it's left people wondering, and I think more and more they're looking back to business to provide some of that stability. But I would step back a little bit and say, first and foremost, we have to remember that employees are people, and they have problems and they have challenges, and they aren't just like separate workers. And at the core, as a CEO, your job is to help take care of your people.
Mhm.
And our business job is to take care of people and make sure their health and wellness is good. The best way to do that is first start by taking care of our people. So, it's important to me that they have, number one, access to great health care. Number two, that socially, they are free to make the decisions that are best for them. So, when I think about that, my job is to really ensure that our employees are taken care of no matter who they love, where they live, how they want to live, what kind of medical procedures they have. None of that should matter. My job is to take care of them so they can provide a great experience to all of our employees. So, my view is that by and large that CEOs should comment on what they feel passionate about. And in our companies, we want to make sure that we are taking great care of our people. And at Transcarent, our job is to make it easy for people to access high quality, affordable health and care. And that doesn't mean sometimes, it doesn't mean only in certain states. It doesn't mean that, if a woman or a man wants to do something to their body, that the government should get involved. I think that's a very conservative principle. So, the government shouldn't be in your home and it shouldn't be in your body. And those are personal medical decisions that people should make. So, my view is that CEOs, people look to their CEO and they want her or him to provide guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And, now that said, there are some limits to that. I don't think that extends to saying you should vote for a particular candidate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it does extend to saying you should vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I want my people to vote and participate, and participation in everything. I want them to volunteer. I want them to participate at work. I want them to participate in their communities. So that's very consistent. What they do, how they vote, doesn't matter to me. And frankly, I would like to make sure that we have some variation there. I don't want all Republicans or all
Mm-hmm.
Democrats
Mm-hmm.
or all independents. I'd like a mixture, and I don't mind. And then to your second part of your question, we have to teach people and require people to do that in a civil way. We like to say, and this quotes, again, somebody else, and I'm sorry, I can't recall who, but they said, you can throw hard objects, just not sharp objects. You can say to someone, I don't think, tell me why that's the right position.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. What you can't say is that position is stupid,
Mm-hmm.
because now all of a sudden you've thrown this criticism in there.
Yes.
One is an exploration. Let's debate about this. And in this country, we have this wonderful tradition of politicians who would fight during the day and go out to dinner in the evening.
Yeah.
And because they said, you have a position, I respect how committed you are to that position. You really believe it. I believe mine. And we'll come out somewhere in the middle and we'll argue about it. And then that night, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means in that area, we disagree, and we can agree to disagree. What we can't tolerate in any company, in any society, is a lack of civility. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
And we should call that out. We should question that. I think the other thing is we have to respect science. We have to respect truth. And we should also call those things out when they're not happening. We can't forget them and say, well, we're going to disregard that. I mean, there are certain things that we have to draw lines on in values. And I think we can hold, in this case, both sides accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's the role of a CEO to state an opinion and have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also the role of the CEO to allow for dissent. That's what our country is built on.
And I'm hearing you like to kind of nurture the environment and and give some guidance on what that means.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm
And,
hearing
and
that
again,
too.
it's no different than the way we build products, the way we have discussions.
Yeah,
You
that's a
can
great point.
disagree with anyone.
Yep.
I love when someone calls me out in front of a group, and sometimes new people say, well, I wanted to say this quietly, privately. And it's like, no, 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 I
No,
want you to
yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll tell them, no, no, later when we reconvene, bring it up in front of everyone. Won't that embarrass you? No, that will show everyone that anyone can question anyone. We're after something that we all agree on, a better idea. And for the country, we're after a better ideal of who we can be as a society, as a country. And you only get that through this exchange of ideas, but it has to be done in a civil way.
Civil, yeah. Thank you. So in the time, we have very little time remaining. So I'm going to squeeze in two questions here. Let's see if I can do it. So one is, you have, I know how to embarrass you, which is to read a list of your accomplishments, which I won't do, but you've accomplished a great deal, Glen. In addition to the businesses you've built, which some of which we've been talking about today, one of two founding partners at Seven Wire Ventures, one of the highest returning venture capital funds in Illinois. In 2019, you were awarded the Ripple of Hope Award. So this is a 10-year retrospective, and you were saying earlier about being kind of future focused. What do you see as the next 10 years for yourself? So that's my first question, and I need you to answer it quickly because I have another question.
Well, I would just say, look, I grew up in a household where my mother said, to whom much is given, much is required. Or in the Jewish faith, we say, tikkun olam, you're responsible for making the world better, for repairing the world. And, that's what I plan to continue to do in whatever I do. That's my objective, to make things better, not just for me or my family, but for everyone who hasn't had those same opportunities. And by doing that, we'll find the poor kid from the South Side who finds a cure to some disease that I may have eventually. But we'll only do that if we empower and enable everyone through better healthcare, better education, the two keys to our success.
So in the last couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask of all interviewees these days for the Making Magnificence project, and that is, what does magnificence mean to you in your own life?
Well, I think I may have given the answer too soon, and that is, I think it's all about making a difference. And people, I'll go back to this example of people say, well, you need work-life balance. I absolutely disagree with that. I don't want balance. I work really hard and then I get to go home. No, I want to love everything I do and do it with passion. Whether it's work and life, to me, it's all the same. There is no work. I love what I do. How is that work? I love doing it. I love interacting with people, meeting people, showing them how things can be better. I love, donating. I love volunteering. I love traveling. So to me, the only challenge is there aren't enough hours. So I think this is about, how big an impact can you make? But that doesn't mean you have to run a company. Teachers make a big impact. Firefighters make a big impact.
Yes.
Military people, this is about commitment. And you find some of the happiest people, they make next to no money. They love what they do. And they are so passionate and so committed, and they're making a difference. And so, if you ask most people, they will say the person who made the most difference, maybe other than their parents, is a teacher or a coach. Think of that impact. And so what I want is, I want to be able to make a difference. I'd love to do it at scale. When we brought out electronic prescribing and brought that to scale, we knew that we saved thousands, tens of thousands of lives of people. That made a difference. And we know that. And I'm very proud of that. 1 million people being healthier, many of whom have diabetes, so they can live their life until we find a cure. And so I want to go on and do that in healthcare and in every other part of what we're doing. And to me, that's what it's about, living your life and making a difference. And that's what I would say it is.
Well, thank you. I know we're at time here. So my guest today, we've covered a lot of terrain. My guest today has been Glen Tullman, CEO of Transcarent, for this very special 10-year retrospective interview. Thank you.
Well, thank you for putting up with me for 10 years of occasional interviews. And it's great, always great to talk with you. And thank you for such wonderful, insightful questions.
Thanks for being here.